Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of GC Live Talking Tuesday Nights, a Monday night edition. Changing up here a little bit as we get ready for another week of football for the Gamecocks as they get ready to take on Texas A&M in a big game, to say the least, this Saturday at Williams-Brice. Alongside me, as always, is intern Joe. We'll also have Pup Howard, Gamecock four-star linebacker commit, joining the program a little bit later on. We will get to that shortly. Pup Howard will be joining us in a little bit. And, Joe, I'm going to have you start because we're having some technical difficulties, it seems like, with our Facebook right now. So I'm going to go see if we can tweak that real quick. But the big story, Joe, is just being able to get things rolling and headed in the right direction based on what you were able to do before the bye week, right? You want to be able to start fast. We're going to get into these things a little bit later on. But what do you want to see the most from South Carolina as they get ready to take on the Aggies this Saturday?
I mean, Mike, absolutely. I think they need to start fast. They need to play hard, play the whistle. After a bye week, this team is 5-0 after like a week of rest or extended rest. Then shout out Ben Portnoy, knock on wood, Beamer said when he asked that in a teleconference. But yeah, I think it really comes down to the defense just trying to generate turnovers and really trying to get things rolling. They looked great against Kentucky. Darius Rush with the big play on the fumble. So, I mean, it really comes down to just being able to, number one, generate turnovers. Number two, stop the run. That's always been a big focal point for this defense. And if they can stop the run early, it really limits the A&M passing game. I also think, too, like, again, stopping the run, I think mostly – It kind of opens up this defense. It lets this defense play freely on the outsides when they do force the other team to pass. So it's big. I think offensively, I think we need to get the run game going back, get those backs involved, and just kind of like go downhill when you're running the ball. I think the offensive line needs a good game. They've been playing great, played great against Kentucky. From Spencer's standpoint, you got to remain calm when outside the pocket, smarter with the football. But like Texas A&M is a real football team. They've beaten a lot of good teams, and they've also gotten beat by a couple teams that they shouldn't have. So I think it'll be interesting. Brings the same energy as Kentucky essentially in terms of significance. So you got to go out in front of your home fans. Night game, so prime time, got to play well.
And look, Joe, we've talked about it last week on GC Live, Talking Tuesday Nights, that everything that you could say about South Carolina, I say everything for the most part, things that you could say for South Carolina after that Kentucky game, you could say for A&M, right? You have an extra week to get ready for this game. You're an extra week to get healthy, extra week of preparation, extra week to be able to put the mental side of it too, right? You're coming off a win. You can put that to the side. Well, for A&M, yes, they're coming off a loss against Alabama, but at the same time too, they were able to get ready for being able, from a physical standpoint, being able to rest up, being able to go back to the playbook and be able to tweak some things a little bit, maybe throw some extra wrenches out there, which I'm sure South Carolina will do a couple things, whether it be offensively, whether it be defensively. Shoot, I'm sure from a special team standpoint, we might not necessarily notice it. The majority of the fan base might not notice it when they watch special teams out there, but they could be setting up different wedges, whether it be on a kickoff return or, from a punt block standpoint, how many guys they're actually sending. We go back to that Georgia State game. One of the first blocks they had, they only sent 3 guys. It wasn't a block attempt really at all. It was more so trying to set up a return. It's just that Georgia State did an awful job of blocking it, and South Carolina was able to capitalize off it. So I mention a lot of that because this game, look, A&M to me is more talented than South Carolina. And if you're offended by that, look, this is the same team for the most part. For the most part, they did lose some guys. This is the same team that kicked your teeth in a year ago. Let's not forget that. Let's not forget that this A&M team, if South Carolina is able to come out and beat A&M, I think it would be one of the more impressive 1-year swing I've ever seen in college football. Just to go from what we saw a year ago to what we could see this Saturday. So obviously that's a lot of what ifs. But again, A&M, still a very talented team. I know a lot of people are asking about the quarterback situation. We will get into that in a little bit. We'll probably find out more. This is why we tape these shows on Tuesday nights. We're taping it a day earlier, though. We'll have Pup Howard on a little bit. But we'll find out more I'm sure, from A&M tomorrow, if not later on in the week. But yeah, they're banged up at quarterback. It's just funny. Look, I don't care who the heck's playing quarterback for A&M. At the end of the day, they're still a very good team. They're still a very good team. They gave Bama a hell of a game. I mean, we could be sitting here today right now. Alabama could have 2 losses. Alabama could have 3 losses, for crying out loud, if you really want to dig into it. So I say all that because there's a lot of momentum right now for South Carolina. And we've talked about this before, Joe. One of the challenging things that I've seen from South Carolina over the last couple of years, and it's unfair sometimes to loop in these players. It's unfair to loop in Beamer and this coaching staff, but that's all we really have right now, which is historically, at least in recent years, anytime there's been some type of momentum for South Carolina, this is where they fall flat. This is where they come up short. This is where the expectations are higher and they don't live up to it. Having that extra week is huge. But again, A&M has the same thing. So I don't know how much of an advantage it really will be. It will certainly level the playing field, though. It's kind of like, to make a really corny comparison, it's kind of like, an old school video game, right? And you're just trying to get your stamina back up, right? You're not moving at all, and you're just in that corner or whatever the heck you are, and you're getting your energy back up. It's going to level it all out. And even though I feel like A&M has more talent, that doesn't mean South Carolina can't beat them. It doesn't mean Kentucky had more talent.
Yeah.
Kentucky had more talent. I know people don't want to agree with that, but Kentucky had more talent. But you know what, though? South Carolina executed when they needed to. They executed when they needed to. And if you're able to beat A&M, now you get to 5-2. Now you're 1 win away from being bowl eligible. But on top of that, you have an opportunity to finish off the season very strongly. Even though you had some tough games, going to Gainesville, playing Tennessee, playing at Clemson. I know Vandy's in there too, but just mentioning that Orange Crush to end the year. Bottom line is, it doesn't get any easier. Doesn't get any easier. So to be able to go out there and get a win this weekend would be huge, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. This weekend is very big in terms of momentum, right? You talked about it. It's been a problem for this program to kind of get real momentum going. And I think last year, as back and forth as it was, you could feel the energy, the momentum kind of going downhill. Now with this bye week, granted, it's kind of put a kind of pause on it, if you will. But I can still feel the energy behind it. Texas A&M's a big game. It's a prove-it game to see if this team can kind of hold on to momentum and go out there and knock off another SEC opponent. And I think, Mike, too, it's really, really hard to generate momentum going downhill in a season in the SEC. It is very, very, very hard. It's the toughest conference in football. So to generate any momentum, let alone what this team has done so far and what they could do with Texas A&M, it's huge. It's really big for the program, for Beamer, for everybody, the players. It really shows that this team is what it has been built up to be for a second-year program under Shane Beamer.
So there's some stats I do want to get into. We mentioned some of them last week. And again, if you're just joining us and you missed it, yes, we're doing this on a Monday night. A little change up this week. It will usually be a Tuesday night show. It's been that way all season long, but we had to change it up a little bit this week. I'll be actually on Celtics duty tomorrow night, home opener. So we had to make an adjustment, and it worked out because Pup Howard's going to be joining us. So it all worked out. But that is the reason why we don't like to hide things from you, but that's the reason why. Nothing too crazy. But going back to Richard's point, we need more than 7 in the first half. Yeah. No. And this is something that we mentioned last week, Joe, that South Carolina has just struggled with. And if you missed my story today on Gamecock Central, we changed it up a little bit. It wasn't a typical mix in a water Monday, since there was no game over the weekend for South Carolina. So instead of having a former player come on and talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of what we saw from the previous game, I kind of just wrote a little story about the good, the bad, and the ugly, which we've seen from South Carolina so far. And one of those things was just the slow starts. And I have that as the ugly. I have that as, if you have to look at what has took place with South Carolina the first half of the year, right? You're trying to break things down. I know there's going to be a lot of people that will probably say the offense. I put the offensive rhythm as the bad. The run defense I had in there as the bad, even though they looked better in the second half against Kentucky. But this has been an issue going back to last season for South Carolina. Just these slow starts. And yes, they did win the first quarter against Kentucky last week. They won it 7-0. That could have easily been a tie game, though. I mean, that could have been 3-3. I mean, if you really want to go back and forth and nitpick just because of what happened, right? I mean, South Carolina forces a fumble, they block a kick, they only get able to get 7 points. Kentucky goes down, they miss a kick. But the point being is, when South Carolina wins the first quarter, and this is against FBS teams, I mentioned this last week, but I'm going to say it again because I think it's huge this week against A&M. In those games, under Shane Beamer, South Carolina is 5-1 when they outscore their opponents in the first quarter against FBS teams. 5-1. When they are either outscored in the first quarter or tied, they are 5-6. So the moral of the story, you need to, against a good A&M team, you need to be able to come out fast. You need to be able to come out fast. And look, you played against a Kentucky team from a defensive standpoint going into that game that was ranked top 20 in the country. I get that from an offensive standpoint, there are people that are going to be frustrated with the offense. I understand that. But realize, too, that you're going up against a good defense. Going up against defense. And they got better as the game went on. Man, if they can get out to an early lead, get some points on the board, they're going to put a lot of smiles on people's faces, and maybe one of the people that will smile will be Grayson Pup Howard. So we'll get into that in a little bit because I want to get Pup on the line here. Pup, first off, man, I appreciate you hopping on short notice. How you been, man?
I've been good. Football season's going good, so I'm really excited.
So we've been talking about the upcoming game for South Carolina. We're gonna switch it up here a little bit. Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about just what's been going on with you. We had Dante Reno on last week. He kind of shared with us what it's been like for him so far from a season standpoint. I'm going to ask you a lot of similar questions. Mm-hmm. First thing is, for you personally, what were some of your goals heading into this scene from an individual standpoint that you wanted to be able to work on to be able to elevate your game? And have you been able to do that so far?
Yeah, so I really had 2 goals going into the season. One is just making sure that I'm consistent, making plays each and every game, doing what I'm supposed to do each and every game. Just I set the standard going in my 10th, 11th, and now in my 12th grade year, so it's just following the standard. Just reading my keys and just not making like stupid amateur mistakes because it's my senior year. So I've been on that track. I've been doing great, leading my team to 6-1 right now. And the second goal was, of course, the state championship. I was, blessed to be able to be committed before the season, had offers from everybody in the country. But now it's more about non-personal stuff, state championship, making sure that in February that my other guys have a whole full table of people signing. It's just that type of thing that I'm focused on instead of like the personal stuff.
I'm glad you brought it back to that, right? Because you might not even realize it, but just going from a question like that and talking about some of your personal goals and bring it back from a team standpoint, it's important because think about how free you've been able to probably be this year from a mental standpoint. You're not worrying about, okay, and I'm sure, and we can talk about it in a little bit, I'm sure there's some schools that maybe are still trying to reach out to you to see, okay, hey, I know you're not committed yet because it's obviously verbal until the first week of December. But I'm sure it's more of in your control. Do you feel like you're just going out there and you're able to just play now? And Absolutely. Have you noticed a difference?
Absolutely. That's the biggest reason why I committed over the summer is I wanted to make sure that I was able to actually like focus on my team 100%. I didn't have to, take visits on top of visits and try to use my phone as a constant landline between thousands of coaches each and every night after practice. So I'm glad to be able to shut it down and actually like focus on my team.
You mentioned the way your team's playing right now. How enjoyable is that? Because obviously you have dreams and aspirations of playing at the next level. You're going to be playing in the SEC at South Carolina. But, I mean, high school football is special, man. I don't care what level of college you play, whether it be D1, D2, D3. College football is a lot of fun. And anyone that's played it can tell you. some of the most fond memories that I have were playing college ball, but at the same time too, high school ball is just special. How special has this season been to be able to enjoy it with your guys, knowing that, hey, look, there's a dream in front of me of being able to play college ball, but I want to live in the moment right now.
Absolutely. So most days it's heaven. I've been at the same high school all 4 years. I was 3-7 my freshman year, and now we're 6-1 going on my senior year. We were able to make the playoffs when we got my new head coach. He came here going into my 10th grade year. I was able to be part of the team that was able to get him his victory against his old high school 2 years in a row. Overtime win this year, and I mean we're just dominating and just being the team that we're supposed to be. Everybody's looking good. Been leading our defense to averaging about 7 points scored on us per game this year, so we're rolling. And then the other days it's hard sometimes. You got to lead each and every day, all that good stuff. But I mean, I love my team, and I wouldn't ask for a better team to be a part of.
Shout out to Wes Mitchell over at Gamecock Central, showing some love for Pup. Also going to have intern Joe hop on here in a minute because I know he's got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Pup, I feel like you and Dante, and I'm not just saying this to blow smoke up your behind, but I mean, it seems like you guys are well beyond your years. And I think being able to ask a question to you like this, like I asked Dante last week, it helps this fan base understand things a little just helps them understand a little bit better, right? And I know that you don't speak for every recruit, but for you personally, look, the highs and lows, and you get it from playing high school football. It's going to be obviously a little bit different playing in the SEC because there's more eyes. More eyes means more voices.
Yes,
when there's highs and lows on social media about the team and this and that, for you personally, do you even pay attention to that? And the reason I bring that up is because I think some fans get so concerned sometimes about seeing what Johnny 36444 has to say about the game. They get worried sometimes about a recruit. But at the end of the day, does that really bother you? Or do you just look at it as, you know what, that's just the passionate fan base, and that just comes with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't look at it like that. I see a lot of recruits posting, they'll screenshot a message that they got from a fan or whatever and post it on Twitter and stuff. One that fan probably has never played football in their life. You don't focus on that stuff. They're just passionate fans. Some of these people have been fans for decades. Their grandparents were fans. So somebody's always gonna have something to say. But you just focus on the task at hand and just focus on that, and everything's gonna play out.
And I can tell you right now, being back up here doing the double duty right now this fall, covering the Patriots. They're on a 2-game win streak, and I can tell you, I can go back to the Brady days when they were winning Super Bowls, man. I mean, every Monday someone was upset about something. So it doesn't matter where you are. So I bring that up, though, because it's not to bash South Carolina fans. It's to show you that this happens everywhere. And it's just trying to give a perspective from a recruit, because I can sit here and tell you but it's good to be able to hear you say it directly, because I think some of these fans, it makes them feel a little bit better. I'm sure some will get still nervous a little bit. I get it. They'll be like, what good does this do the program?
Yeah. So like, if I was like getting recruited by a school and I looked at somebody say, oh, well, he's not good, we don't want him anyway, that's not going to affect my decision. And if the recruit really likes the school, that's not going to affect the decision at all. Like I said, a lot of recruits get sidetracked by that, and sometimes, but it's the goal at hand, the task at hand.
And you know what? 90% of the times, if that's the case, you probably don't want the player at that school anyway, if they're worried about their feelings or whatever, and
because let them make one bad play on Saturday, and then a lot more people, and then it's gonna be bad.
It's like dating a girl. If you're already looking for reasons to get upset, right? Yeah. Just the way she eats her food or whatever. I mean, it's just anyway. Probably shouldn't be dating her to begin with. If you're already looking for a reason. I'm gonna throw intern Joe in right now because I know you got a question for Pup.
Yeah, Pup. First off, I love the nickname because it proves you have that dog in you. But Pup, man, so obviously I saw a couple comments about it. We're seeing it all on your Twitter. How much are you recruiting other guys, and how much are you texting, kind of getting other guys to maybe flip or just give a hard commit?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of talent in the 23 class. It's a lot of talent that shouldn't be playing against us. That's 100%. And it's a lot of guys out there that I know are they're good on the field, but moreover, they're good people. and I know that's what we need at South Carolina. So it's a lot of guys that are recruiting a lot of different positions. But like we have a great 23 class right now. So I'm really excited about what we're gonna have.
Absolutely.
What's that process like, though? Because we talked with Dante, right? It's not like it's the summer. And I'm not saying you were sitting by the pool each day having a pina colada, virgin pina colada at that, because I know you're under 21. But the point being is, I know that's a little bit freer in the summer. Now you have schoolwork, you got football. What's the? I mean, I'm sure it varies. I'm not asking you to say, okay, when you wake up at 6 o'clock, what's it every day? But how do you balance that? Because I'm sure it's a little bit different in terms of trying to have that communication, or at least consistent communication with some of these other recruits.
So the good thing about me is I'm an early enrollee, so I really don't have much work this year. But like the good thing about a cell phone is it's always on. So I usually hit up the person on Twitter at first, catch up with him, watch his film, get to know him a little bit. They'll ask for his number. We'll talk sometimes on the phone, all that good stuff, build a relationship, and I'll let him know just come to the game. Because when we get in person, we're gonna really click, and he's gonna love the atmosphere that we have in South Carolina. For example, Nick. So before I actually met Nick at South Carolina, I've never knew Nick.
Nick Harbor, for anyone that is missing that part of it, I think 90% of the fan base knows, but just in case anyone's wondering who Nick is.
Yeah. So it was it was over the summer. I know that, so it had to be my OV. Well, me and Nick clicked like automatically, and then we've been best friends ever since. So me and him all talk all the time and all that good stuff. But it's really like, we're high school athletes, we're high school kids, so we relate in a lot of ways. And once you get that connection, it's easy.
There are some questions coming in. I'm going to pull those up in a minute. And what I'll do as well, Joe, we're going to throw that number up there in case anyone wants to call into the program to ask Pup a question. But before I go into this, because Travis, I see you have a question there. You mentioned just the crowd. I asked Dante this question last week, and I know you were there. I spoke with another recruit. I told him I wouldn't put his name out there publicly because he asked me not to. But I want to ask you your perspective of this because, after that Georgia game, obviously Georgia had a good day. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. Georgia had a good day, and people were leaving in the stands. That happens sometimes. But I'm bringing that up because one of the recruits that had a conversation with me said they looked at that saying that's motivating them for when they go to USC to be able to give them a reason to stay in the stands because they know what that atmosphere was like for the majority of the first quarter. And obviously until things start getting out of hand. But I bring that up though, Pup, because I'm sure that there's a portion of the fan base, Nicholas Harbor comes, you want to put your best foot forward, and they see stuff like that, and they get nervous a little bit. And again, I know you're not speaking directly for Nick, but just as a recruit in general, and I know you can only speak for yourself, but whether it be just the vibe you got from a player like him or just the guys that you were around that day, do you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I absolutely think that, seeing that, it might give you the impression that, of course, you want to turn things around. I don't think I don't see it in like a negative light. You just got to play better, straight like that. You want fans to stay, you just got to play better, and it comes down to that. I know it was a bunch of commits there. Nick being with me, it was me, Nick, Tree, all hanging out. Cam was also there. We were just chatting up all this good stuff. Nick was having a ball. The score came out pretty quickly, but he was just glad to be there. But it just comes down to playing better. You see fans leaving, you just got to play better.
I'm going to put that number up there if anyone wants to call in while we have Pup, because I don't want to hold Pup too long. And then, of course, we have Monday Night Football tonight. So we all want to watch some football tonight. If you want to call into the program, here is your number, 803-567-7396. Give intern Joe something to do. He's trying to stay busy over there. So let's keep intern Joe busy. I'm going to pull up one of the questions that Travis had. I'm trying to find it. Here we go, Travis. And the question is, Pup, who would be the biggest influence on your play style?
Oh, that's a good one. All right. So I think I am the biggest fan of Micah Parsons. Going into my 11th grade year, and can still now, I'll watch hours and hours of his game film at Penn State. Versatility. He's 6'3", 240. Being able to move 4'3", being able to play in space, stop the run, rush the edge. I mean, he's a new age linebacker, and he's who I model my game after.
Do you feel that too? I mean, I know it's funny for me to say that because I felt like, shoot, when I was going through college, that hybrid position was starting to come up. The 4-2-5 was really growing, and now it feels like every team's doing it.
Absolutely.
But do you feel like that's probably something that's already going on with a lot of high schools now, but it's just funny to see it just evolve over the last, I'd say, decade or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a speed game now, so it's the fastest and the strongest.
And how do you feel like from a training standpoint? Because you're trying to get big, but would you say speed's more important now than ever?
I think,
how do you try to balance that? Because I'm sure you want to get bigger, but if you get too big too fast, that speed's going to be down. You know what I mean? Trying to get that balance.
So I think it just depends on who you have training you. As long as you do it the right way. For example, during the off season, we lifted heavy in the weight room, and then we'll condition right after. So going through that phase, I was putting on weight fast, and I was still moving. So I put on, since last year, I finished the season at 205 my 11th grade year. I'm 230 now. So being able to just keep the same speed. I'm faster, but keeping weight and my speed up. It's easy as long as you have the right people helping you and you're doing it the right way.
Do you have like kind of a target goal of what would you like at least to have going into USC?
I'm not sure yet. I feel great now. Of course, when I get there, I'll be with Coach Day and I'll be with Chris.
We'll put muscle on you, man. I mean, and you probably have already heard this. There's always a way to be able to put 10 pounds of muscle right in those legs. I mean, that's the first thing. I mean, you can always put, and that's the most important part.
Absolutely.
So that's, if anyone else has a question, let us know. I got intern Joe still here. I don't know how much you've been able to pay attention to South Carolina this year. I'm sure you're paying attention as the best you can. Yeah. But just to see them be able to turn things around and just being able to have as much fun as they did against Kentucky. I mean, from a recruiting standpoint, what is just your vibe when you talk to some of these other players? Maybe guys that are still on the fence of going to South Carolina, but the way they view that, because I tell Gamecock fans this, whether it be on Gamecock Central's message board, whether it be just, I don't see him in person as much. Spoiler, I will be down in South Carolina this weekend, guys. But I say that because some people get so concerned about, people are trolling Beamer or this or that. It's just like, goes back to what Reggie Jackson used to say. Fans don't boo nobodies. I feel like it's always a good thing if people are talking, but just your sense of what some of these other recruits, how they perceive Beamer and just what's going on over there.
Yeah, the biggest thing I sell is it's a family feel, and Coach Beamer is a player's coach. Everybody agrees with that. Everybody loves Coach Beamer. And then after the Kentucky game, just the first play from defense, just making a play. You can't sell that to a defensive player. Just knowing that you just got to have the right people at the right place at the right time with the right head coach, and magic is going to happen. So I sell that. I mean, we played a good game against Kentucky. We're 4-2 right now, and we lost to two pretty good teams. And then Arkansas, 14 points, lost by 14 points. You just got to have the right people that's going to want to play. And we have a great class, and I just sell that to the recruits, and everybody I'm talking to is buying it, and everybody that I'm talking to is loving it. So.
I know there's a couple players who I could bring up. Well, I'm just going to bring up one in particular. What would it look like with Pup Howard and Nicky Manwari on the same field from a defensive standpoint? Seeing what this young man's doing as a freshman.
It's crazy because me and Nick are tight, real close. So we
really?
met. We met last season when I was on a visit. I want to say it was either the Kentucky game or the Clemson game. So we were sitting it was halftime. We were sitting at the table, and Nick came over and sat by me. Then we just started talking and catching up and all this good stuff. And we've been close ever since. Every time I go up to South Carolina, I say what's up. He was my host for my OV. And Nick actually was a big reason why I decided that I need to that was home. just being around Nick and knowing how hungry he is, and he just wants to get better and play. I wouldn't ask for a better teammate than that. So we spent the weekend having fun and all that good stuff. We did we was competing all weekend. We did bowling, Jenga at Coach Beamer's house. We did everything. So we were just competing all that good stuff. But I mean, we're gonna play good together. I know that for a fact. The good thing about when I get there is Nick wouldn't have to make 21 tackles a game because I'll be making all the tackles for him. But just knowing that behind you that you have somebody, not only a great player but a great person, just makes you play harder. And that brotherhood is going to take us farther than no other.
See a question from Michael. We'll have that one popped up in just a little bit. You talk about bowling, man. I mean, we got Corey Rucker. He showed up on his official visit with a bowling ball. So I've seen Corey go to the lanes a couple times. I've got into the bowling game before I left to get back up to Boston for a little bit. But okay. I do want to bring this up before I think Michael has a question. I'll get to Mike. The other Michael has a question. But being down in Jacksonville, Florida, I know I know people in South Carolina are going to get upset with me when I say this, but I know you're from the South, if you will. I mean, I know some people are going to get upset. They don't want to call Jacksonville the South. I get that. Okay. I'm a dumb Yankee. You can just blame it on me. Right. But I say that, have you been able to kind of find any fixins food wise in Columbia?
Oh yeah. So I always eat at Maurice's. I know a lot of people told me a lot of good places to eat, but my coach, Coach Bubba, brings me to Maurice's, and I mean, I love Maurice's, so that's what I eat all the time. And if it's so good, like why stop?
It is so good. Like, it is so good. Yeah. I'm impressed, Paul. That's a spot, man, for barbecue.
I got a confession. I've never been to Maurice's. 6 years in South Carolina, never been.
You have to have it. You have to. They're hush puppies, like they're the best puppies I've ever had.
I'm gonna give you two of my favorite barbecue places, and if anyone has some on the side, True Barbecue, Michael says, two of my favorite. One, the Ultimate Tailgaters, and you're gonna be able to get to know him if you haven't already. Chris Fulmer, he's gone to, and I should know the number off the top of my head right now. I don't. He's been to over, 440 something straight Gamecock football games in a row. But he will do some of the catering for Gamecock football. He makes some of the best baked beans I've ever had in my life. But another good place is Railroad Barbecue, which is not too far between Allen and Benedict. Fairly new.
The place is
good
legit.
brisket.
Yeah,
I'm trying those spots out.
Yeah, it's so good.
Good brisket. I do want to bring this up. Michael says, and I know you can't. I know you don't want to spoil. You might know some things that you don't want to say. Over at Gamecock Central, we hear things too, and we don't want to spoil anyone's parade.
Absolutely.
So if you can't answer this question, which is, I was thinking about. Oops, wrong one. I saw Michael pop up twice. Sorry, Michael. I'll pull up your other one, but I was thinking about him and Nick. That's a good one, Mike. Here's the other question from Mike. Sorry, Mike. Wrong one. Who are you hoping? Who you hope commits next to the Gamecocks? You might know things, and I don't want you to ruin anyone's parade.
Absolutely.
So if you can't answer that, are we getting warmer on a couple more players? I mean, whatever way you want to word it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just go ahead and say my biggest project is Nick Harbor. Me and him are so close, and he's a great person, great player, and he has a great family. So I wouldn't ask for a better addition to this commit class in Nick Harbor. But I've been talking to a couple other players. Some committed, some not. So don't want to disclose that for them. But we have a lot of good players that we're hoping to add to it. Like I said, we have a great 23 class as is, but it's always great to keep improving.
You were here for the Georgia game. Do you have any other plans of coming on down here? I don't know if there's any conflicts with high school games. I know Dante plays a lot of games on Saturdays, but any plans of coming down before the end of the year?
Yeah, so I'll be there for the this week for the A&M game, and either I should be back for the Tennessee, or I might come back the week after and play this weekend. Come to Missouri, but I've come in 2 more times.
Joe, any other questions you got? I'm going to see if there's any more questions over here for Pup and Susan. Thank you, Susan. Thank you. Railroad Barbecue is very good. Very good. And they got I know he's at SC State, but we got to give shout out to Buddy Pugh. There's a poster Buddy Pugh in there too. Anytime you have a restaurant of Buddy Pugh inside, Buddy Pugh's such a great man, Pup. You'll get to know Buddy, even though he's SC State. Buddy Pugh's a staple of the state of South Carolina.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. But I guess, Pup, my last question was, you've mentioned like repeatedly that when you're recruiting other players, you're looking for like good guys, and you've always brought out that they're good guys. And I mean, we know what Shane teaches about culture and stuff. How big of a factor in your commitment was the culture, and what do you like about what's brewing here?
Yeah, so the culture was 100% of my commitment, and the people there. It's not a lot of places that you go that you'll meet all different levels of the staff. For example, I'm real close with Kristen, the nutritionist, and that's going to be a big part of how well I do in college is how much weight I can put on, how I can stay healthy, how I can stay fast, just what I'm putting inside. And she's great. I love her, and I know that we work well together. Coach Dave, the strength coach, he reminds me so much of my head coach. When I met Coach Dave, I felt at home. Coach White, DC linebacker coach. I mean, he's doing great things with the defense, and I just want to be that guy that makes sure that he's undoubtedly the best linebacker coach in the country, and undoubtedly that I'm the best linebacker in the country. So I know we're going to work well together, and nobody will want to play for a different head coach. Coach B. Like I said, when I committed, he jumped into my arms. So that's the type of player, the type of coach that he is, and the type of relationship we have.
Awesome.
Pup, we'll wrap things up in a little bit here. You've been very gracious with your time. We got Brian. I don't know if this question's been asked, and I apologize if it's already been asked in the past by one of my coworkers, Wes or Chris. But any plans to enroll early? I don't know. I know it's funky sometimes in different places where you are, but do you have any plans on doing that?
Yes, sir. I'm enrolling early.
You are enrolling early. Okay. And I apologize. That question's probably been asked like a million times. Great job, Mike, of being able to mention. Yeah. I do want to ask you this, Pup, before we wrap things up here. You're seeing how things are playing out right now, and you get to see it from a very unique perspective, right? I know the conversations probably aren't as much, but I'm sure you're still getting text messages occasionally from Beamer and this coaching staff. But I bring that up because on the outside, not every fan, but I think a majority of them, they look at it from a win-loss standpoint. They're seeing what's going on. They saw what happened last year. They were able to get to 7 wins. They saw where the program was a couple years prior. You're getting to see it from a different perspective. Is there anything that stands out to you as you're going through this process? Because, there's probably still something you mentioned. There's probably still some teams that are reaching out to you, trying to recruit you. But what's really stood out to you? I mean, we talk about, and it's probably going to steal your answer, about just that family atmosphere and just how the realness. But is there anything in particular outside of those two things that we hear so much of? Not saying they're not important, but is there anything else that stands out to you about what Shane Beamer in this program is doing right now that really makes you say, hey, I want to be part of that?
Absolutely. One thing is, of course, the culture and the people that's there. I've helped build this recruiting class, and I wouldn't, I wouldn't like get up and leave and nothing like that. This is my family. Besides that, the wins and the losses, this team a couple years ago wouldn't beat Kentucky. They wouldn't have been able to overcome adversity like that. All this good stuff. I know Coach Beamer is doing great. It's everything that goes into it. For example, just a little thing. Well, the big things, Justin King. You're not going to find a media professional like Justin to be able to cover a university like that. So just stuff like that'll be able to help me, help my team, push us over the edge. Like I said, if you have the right players at the right place at the right time with the right head coach, magic's going to happen. And I'm bringing the right players, and we're going to be at the right place at the right time, and Coach Beamer is going to be the right head coach for us.
Do you feel like this is a player-led program? Because that's something Dante mentioned, and how that is something that he's trying to use as a sale pitch to some of these other recruits.
Absolutely. I feel like, Coach Beamer is a players coach. So he's going to, care about us. deeper than what we do on the field, and be able to mold what we do to our strengths and all that good stuff. I'm not saying that, of course it's going to be hard, it's going to be tough, it's going to be mentally challenging, and that's what college football is. Because if it's not, that's not the right place to be. But like I said, the staff is wonderful, and we have all the right people in all the right places.
Well, Pup, I appreciate you hopping on with us, buddy. Maybe I'll see you down there this Saturday, but safe travels. You have a game Friday night, or are you guys off this week?
Yes, sir. We have a homecoming this Friday.
All right. Any chance of being the homecoming king, though? I mean, we see it sometimes with players. No? Not on the running?
I didn't run for homecoming court.
That's all right. Hey, you're focused. You're focused on the team. You're focused on the state title. I get it. I get it. Pup, appreciate you, buddy. And again, safe travels down to South Carolina, or up to South Carolina this week.
I really appreciate you for having me.
No problem, Pup. Pup Howard, once again, hopping on with us. Always good to be able to do these recruits. And it looks like we have a call right now joining the program. And I'll let intern Joe take that. We'll wrap this show up talking about this upcoming weekend's game against Texas A&M. Waiting for intern Joe to give me the thumbs up. But, God, I'll tell you what, the last 2 weeks between having Pup Howard on tonight, Dante Reno last week, you can just see there's the similarity, which is there's guys that aren't just great athletes, great people, but they're doing a great job from a recruiting standpoint too. Maybe Lady Bree would agree with this. Lady Bree, how you doing?
Hi, Mike. Absolutely. And there's a lot of positive things, and that's kind of the conversation I wanted to have with you tonight, because there's like this portion of the fan base that has this negative idea, I guess, about our offensive coordinator. And I want to get your take on that, because there was like this big rumor mill that after the Kentucky game, the reason we played so great from first half to second half was, somebody else was calling the plays. It just sounded really weird to me. I felt like, there was a lot of mistakes that came from Spencer in the first half that cost some points on the board. And nobody ever wants to say, these things are on Spencer or that, and then we turn around and it's like, there was a different play caller in the second half. And also going to what you just mentioned, and I had said this last week when Reno was on the show, do we have Reno here without Marcus Satterfield? I don't know. I mean, he's a QB coach. I mean, he's the guy building the relationship with these offensive pieces we're recruiting. I mean, I can't sit here and say that he's not doing something right, But what is your take on Satterfield specifically? Because even after a win, it's fire Satterfield everywhere. It's like what's going on here? What was the difference to you in the first half and the second half?
Well, let me answer one of the questions that you brought up, which is if Marcus Satterfield isn't here next year, right, or in 2 years, should Gamecock fans be worried about Dante Reno? I don't think that's the case whatsoever. I really don't, unless something dramatic happened. And I'm talking Shane Beamer leaving or something like that. I think Dante Reno will be a Gamecock regardless. And the reason being is, outside of the fact of his love for this university, his father's a college football coach. He wouldn't have committed without knowing the risk and everything else that's a possibility. And I say risk, not saying that anything is going to happen, but he knows what could happen. Coaches, coaching changes happen sometimes, whether it be positional, whatever the case may be. I'm not saying that is going to happen. It could, but I'm not saying it is going to happen, but that's always a possibility. So I bring that up because I don't think anyone has anything to worry about with Dante Reno. As far as Satterfield goes, I like what they did in the second half. And I think in large part what they did was they were able to get Rattler out of the pocket more than anything. And I feel like that's where he's just at his best. I think the big thing is, we've talked about this before. I know Marcus Lattimore brought this up. And look, there's going to be a lot of people out there. There's a lot of people juggling both these gigs and just seeing it from a college standpoint. Then obviously, growing up in a pro market, but covering the Patriots each week and seeing it on a level where you have former Patriot players and you have, different media members talk about the offense, the defense, all that stuff, right? It makes me laugh sometimes because there's going to be so many voices. There's going to be so many voices. So I bring that up just because there's going to be former players who aren't going to be fans of certain things. There's going to be former players that like certain things. I think with this offense, more than anything, is it a sexy style of offense? No. Is it the style of offense that, should be able to produce more points than what they are doing. Absolutely. It just comes down to execution. Now, there's certain things going back to last week, and I mentioned this after the Kentucky game. I think it was last week after the game and also on Talking Tuesday, that there were times I'm like, what are they doing in the first half? But as the game went on, from an offensive standpoint, I felt like the play calling wasn't the issue. Felt like the execution got better as the game went on as well. And I feel like more than anything, look, they need to continue to, if you want to have a negative that you can say about Satterfield, it's about finding ways to get this offense in a rhythm early and being able to capitalize on the weapons that they do have. I'm not saying that they're not trying to get the ball to Jaheim Bell or get the ball to Juice Wells early. It might feel that way. It might feel like they're not trying to get the ball to Josh Vann at times. Again, I've said this before, going back and watching it on the All-22, some of these guys need to do a better job of getting open. They did a better job of that in the second half against Kentucky. They need to continue to do that. So it's easy to say, why isn't player X, player Y, player Z not getting the ball? And I'm not saying that you're saying that, Lady Bree, but I feel like there's some people that feel that way. And I feel like if South Carolina can continue to find ways of getting the ball to those guys, and I think that's why we're seeing so many screen passes, so many short passes. They're trying to give Rattler an opportunity to capitalize on one of his strengths, which is he can deliver a ball quickly. And you have talented guys. So what's the easiest way to be able to get the ball from your quarterback's hands to your playmaker's hands? Throw the ball quickly. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't, they can continue to do some slants across the middle. I know we've mentioned that. I know that there's a lot of people that would like to see that more, but I feel like that's why we're seeing some of the things that we are seeing. And I'm interested to see, coming off the bye week, the added wrinkles. If you're expecting a whole different playbook, you're absolutely out of your mind. It's just not going to happen. What added wrinkles does South Carolina add to what they've been doing the last couple of weeks? I think everything has to surround the run game, be around the run game, play action, rollouts, and being able to continue to find ways with those rollouts, continue to get Rattler outside the pocket, because I feel like that is when he's at his best. Intern Joe, you're nodding your head there?
Back. Yeah, absolutely. I think, like I said earlier, Mike, Spencer's gotten a lot better at making decisions outside the pocket. We've seen that. In Kentucky, he looked better when he was outside the pocket. And number one, too, I thought he was taking a couple more hits. I know Joe Burrows talked about, when he gets hit, he gets into the game more. And I saw Spencer take a lot more hits that he was kind of leaning into on the run. And then he started to get it going from there. So I think that was big for him, just to kind of get in a rhythm, take a couple shots. I mean, you're playing football. It helps sometimes, Mike. I know you played football. I did too. And it feels good sometimes to, actually be in the game and whatnot.
I just feel, and I mentioned this before, I'm bringing up a comment from Nick, come down to our defenses, the one big game that they showed up. And I do want to mention that because it will come down to the defense. I think for the defense more than anything, we could talk about the situation with A&M. I mean, they could be on a third-string quarterback this weekend. The problem is we're not going to know until probably, week 2, week 3? Week 2, week 3, day 2 of the week, which is Tuesday, and then, of course, Wednesday. I was trying to figure out why you were smirking. What's going on in there, Joe? Joe, and you can just go out and just go tackle Rattler a few times and reach for it.
That'll be
But I think this is something else that I mentioned before on the story today from an offensive standpoint with South Carolina, just the run game, just the last couple of weeks. I get it, and I don't know how many times I'm going to keep having to say this because I know there's going to be some people that, they did against Charlotte, they did against SC State. Okay, it's over with, okay? At the end of the day, that's the schedule. The schedule's the schedule. They did exactly what they were supposed to do, okay? We've said that ad nauseum right now, right? I don't know how much more times I have to say. There's going to be people that bring that up, though. But just throwing that out there, right? After struggling to establish the run the first 3 games of the season, USC has rushed for 659 yards in their past 3 games. Think about that. 659 yards, okay? I want to give you an idea of how non-existent, I think that's the best way to put it, how non-existent their run game was through the first 3 games. 211 yards. Think about that. 211 11 yards in the first 3 games. I was awful at math in college. I was just awful at math in general. Once you start throwing letters in there and stuff, I mean, 3 plus 3, 3 times 2, I can do all that crap, but throw letters in there and stuff. But the point being is, that's maybe why I talk about sports for a living now. But that is more than 3 times the amount of yards that they had that first week. So the fact that they have been able, and I hate using the word identity. It's such a easy cop-out way of just saying, like, what are they? I don't think South Carolina is necessarily a run team. I think they're a team that needs the run to be able to have success. They need to be able to have elements of the run, whether it be obviously running the football, but being able to use the play action, being able to do some boots off of that, being able to use your run game to help open up your passing game. They're not talented enough. I'm sorry. And when I say talented, I'm not talking about necessarily the players, because they certainly have the players, but based on what we've seen from a scheme standpoint, they're not good enough to just go out there and do 5 wide and, whatever the case may be. They need to be able to use their run game to help their passing game, if that makes sense. So going into this week, especially on that first drive of the game, because again, going back to that statistic, when South Carolina outscores their opponent in the first quarter against FBS teams under Shane Beamer, they're 5-1. And when they're either tied or they're losing at the end of the first quarter, they're 5-6 against FBS teams. They need to find a way to come out there and score a touchdown. If they can do that, my God, never mind the fact of what that will do to Williams-Brice, but just the idea of what it can do from a confidence standpoint, and also knowing, and that's not to say A&M is not a good team, because I'm sure it's going to be a rock fight. Just knowing that we've seen this team get better as games have gone on. Sometimes when you come out of a bye week, it's not unusual for teams to play a little slow at the beginning. If you can be the team that avoids that, because I can't see South Carolina and A&M. I can't see both of them going out there and scoring, touchdown. I just can't see it at the beginning of the game. I just can't. That's not how these things usually work when you have a bye week. Teams usually come out. There's always at least one team that comes out slow. If you can be the team that doesn't come out slow, man, and you know that you keep getting better as the game goes on, or at least you have shown, even some of the games where you've got blown out, you keep fighting. And I understand matchups, all right, they're going up against the second team, but the offense sometimes just looks better as the game goes on. So I bring that up because one thing that does concern me, Joe, outside of the run game that they're going to have to do a good job of stopping from an offensive standpoint, we can hit on defense a little bit. Don't want to be super long tonight because I know Monday Night Football is coming up. But one thing I do want to bring up here is, although I feel like we will see added wrinkles in this offense, don't try to get too cute on that opening drive. I know there's some people that are sick and tired of hearing the scripted plays. It happens everywhere. Scripted plays. You have about 12 plays that are scripted. Okay? Don't put yourself in situations where it's 3rd and long. Don't get in situations where it gets you away from the script. But don't get too cute. You don't have to get too cute. Okay? If you want to do a trick play, I get it, but don't force anything. And I'm not trying to bring back bad memories. I'm sure there's some people that have PTSD about it. You think about that Tennessee game a year ago on the road. In the trick pass, Jordan Birch throwing it. Don't feel like you have to force things. Go out there, run the football, use your run game to help open up the pass. Don't do any of this crap where you go out there 4 wide and just try to heave the ball over the field. It's just not going to work. I'm sorry. It's just not going to work. You haven't proven yet that you can make it work consistently. You might hit a deep ball once in a while. That's great. But you need to be able to run the football. You need to be able to open up your pass game through the run. And I feel like if South Carolina can do that early against A&M, never mind the fact that you're going to have 77,000, 80,000 people in there. The majority of them are going to be Gamecock fans supporting you and you're going to have the lights and, the smell of corn dogs right on the other side of the wall at the state fair and all that stuff. I don't know how much of an impact that will have. I bring that up because of the Vandy game, the anniversary of the Zeb Nolan game. There was a fan that was sitting behind me, and he's like, I'm done with this game. I'm going to go get a corn dog and go to the state fair. And he left the game, and, of course, Zeb Nolan throws the touchdown pass in the final second. So I think about that. But go out there and just do what you got to do. Don't try to be cute. Don't try to dress things up. Go out there. You know who you are now. You know who you are. You're a team that needs to run the football. Plain and simple. You're a team that needs to use your running backs to be able to open up the passing game.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's okay to say that. That's no shot against Rattler. That's no shot against some of these receivers. That's who you are. And that's okay. You want to call it a system quarterback? You want to, whatever the hell you want to call it, it's fine. Because guess what? Every successful quarterback, pretty much that we've seen, they've been system quarterbacks. They're playing within the system. There's going to be guys that will go out there, run around. Look at Lamar Jackson yesterday, right? He's talented, but he plays within a system. All these guys do. So don't give me this, they have to do. No, run the football. Run the ball. And I know I've kind of gone on a little rant here. I do want to bring up some of the questions and things people have brought up. We do have to hit our ad reads, though, before we wrap things up. But, Joe, anything that you want to just add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mike, like you talked about it way earlier. You were talking about starting fast. I mean, this team, when they don't start fast at home, they get into a lot more trouble. And two, I think, you were right about the offense. It's always been the MO this year, is just getting the run game going. And that provides, it's a morale boost for everybody. You get the running backs going, and then it opens up a lot more doors for the RPO, just kind of moving Spencer around. And also, as an offensive lineman, when they're running the ball consistently, it's a huge boost when those guys can go downfield, make big blocks on the run. And then, when they have to sit back and pass block, it's a little bit easier. But, I think momentum's a big thing. They got to come out and they start fast. And, Mike, you had the stats earlier. When they start fast, it's huge. And I think you got to do that at home. It's State Fair weekend. You're coming off a bye. All of the hype and expectations from Kentucky is going to be right there at the start of the game. And it's a matter of if this team decides to face it head on, or if, they want to wait and, just, play defense and hope for the best second half,
And going through some of these, and I think, and Travis, you brought the number up about the running, the poor running numbers were tied to the run being abandoned. Yeah. That's the exact reason, there was two things, right? You look at the Georgia game, you look at the Arkansas game, you fell behind early in those games and you had to pass the ball. But, I don't know if necessarily, Travis, you would agree with me with this. I think you would, though, which is they abandoned the run right from the get-go. It wasn't one of those things where it's like, all right, the game is going one way and you feel like you have to throw the football, because obviously, we see it from a passing standpoint. And that's not to say that Rattler's numbers were inflated with the Arkansas game, but they were inflated a little bit, right? You're throwing the football so much and, obviously those yards, they were able to get them, but it was pass. And South Carolina was able to make it a game, or at least be a little bit more competitive in that Arkansas game in the fourth quarter because of it. But ultimately, yeah, you need to run the football. You need to find ways to, shoot. And I know people aren't going to be happy at times, because this isn't going to be a patty cake game. All right. This is not going to be a patty cake game. There's going to be times out there where South Carolina might be 1, 2, 3, might be 3 series in a row where it's 3 and out, or, they have to punt back to back to back. But what are you doing, though, to be able to try to create some type of rhythm, even if you're not scoring, right? Are you, and I say 3 and out, of course you don't want to see three straight out, 3 and outs, but are you able to get things going, though, even if you do have to punt? Are you able to get things going to a point where you make yourself feel good of knowing, okay, you know what? We were able to do this. We're starting to get guys to creep down in the box more. And we've mentioned this before, and this is another reason why the run's so important with South Carolina. We saw it against Kentucky. Teams began to creep down in the box. Even a good Kentucky defense the Wildcats began to creep down the box a little bit, putting an extra man in the box. What happens when you run the football? Well, I mean, it's going to be, that's the reason why they're bringing someone down, because they're trying to stop the run. They respect you. They respect what you're doing in the run game. But what that also is going to do is play action, roll out, passes down the field. It's going to open things up. It's going to open up those lanes. And if people want to say Rattler is a bum or this or that, the guy still has an absolute cannon. If you think he's a bum, if a team thinks he's a bum, fine. Give him a passing lane. Give him a passing lane. See what happens. See what happens. So that's what I would say about that. I do want to. Nicky Brown says we run okay against Kentucky. That's a good defense. If our D shows up, yeah. I mean, look, that was a good Kentucky run defense, and they were able to get over 100-something yards on them. Well, let me take that back. They were able to get over 100 yards on them on the ground. Marshawn Lloyd had over 100 yards rushing on Kentucky's defense. I do want to bring up the ad reads. I know we have some of these questions and comments about this game. I do want to bring this up. Big Red mentions, look at it this way. If we run the ball more, that means that Spencer has less chances of throwing interceptions. I do feel like some of those interceptions, I know the one against, or the two, I should say, against South Carolina State, they weren't on him. I hate doing that. I hate doing the what if game, but I mean, he did exactly what he was supposed to do. I mean, if you want to say that the first interception was a little bit behind, okay, but even that, I mean, hits the receiver's hands, you got to catch it. You got to catch it. It goes back to youth football. I mean, hit your hands, you got to catch it.
Yeah, I think the interceptions are a little bit more glaring because the defense is a little bit better in the SEC. I mean, he still threw them in the Big 12. It was just, I mean, he was scoring at way more efficient pace in the Big 12.
I'll bring up some of these ad reads before we wrap things up here in a little bit, because I do want to get to some things. And then, of course, Monday Night Football is going to kick off shortly. But as we always do, and want to hide these comments here because we want to make sure we give a big shout out to our sponsors. Liberty Tax, they have been a longtime sponsor of all the GC Live shows. Get ready for tax season by giving them a call. They'll be able to help you overcome your taxiety at 803-462-5576. Again, that is Liberty Tax, being able to help you overcome your taxiety. And today's show is also brought to you by our good friend Clint Hammond at the Mortgage Network. Buying a home right now, it is just an absolute zoo. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I'm just fortunate that I got my place beforehand, Joe. And then, of course, now I'm up here in Boston. But that's not the point. The point being is, if you want to get a place right now, it's a little tricky. The market is just an absolute mess. Clint will be able to help you. Former Gamecock quarterback Perry Orth, you heard him a couple weeks ago after the game saying that Clint was the guy that he turned to help him be able to take care of all that stuff that goes into buying a home. And he made his life much, much easier, less hassle. So give Clint a call over at the Mortgage Network. They do an outstanding job as well, and they have been longtime supporters of GC Live and Gamecock Central as a whole. So our good buddy Mike Matulis with Clint Hammond the other day and Wes Mitchell, they were doing a little commercial, a little ad on social media. I think it was right in front of the stadium, and they had the State Fair in the background. Anything else that you want to bring up, though, Joe? I mean, I want to talk about from a defensive standpoint. I do want to just try to bring up some of the comments. We see Travis again. We need to be satisfied with 4 yards in a cloud of dust football game this week. Yeah. And look, and let's flip that so we can get to the defensive side before we wrap things up here. From a defensive standpoint, what they need to do from a defensive standpoint, stop the run. Alex Huntley will be back in this game. We expect him to be back in this game. The biggest question is, how close to 100% is he going to be? Even in 80%, Alex Huntley makes a difference in this game. You need to be able to stop the run. You need to do everything you can. And I think for the first time in a long time this season, of course, Mo Kaba, we know he's hurt. Of course, we know Terrell Dawkins is hurt. We know that Jordan Strawn's done for the season as well. But I bring that up because for a good portion of the beginning of the season, from a defensive standpoint, They were just so banged up. They were so banged up. And what has happened? Well, there were growing pains. You had tough matchups early in the year, so you really didn't have any time to be able to say, okay, what's going on here? But DQ Smith, outstanding job last week. True freshman from Spring Valley, outstanding job at nickel last week. Nick Eamon-Worry speaks for itself. The second most solo tackles in South Carolina. If you double it up, Nick has more solo tackles. Now, maybe the football, maybe it shouldn't be getting to that level. But at the same time, too, Nick has been down in the box. I'll bring that up because I think so many people look like, well, it shouldn't be getting to the third level. I agree with you on that. But at the same time, too, Nick's been asked not to just play in the secondary. Nick's been brought down in the box just because of how versatile he is. That's why there's a reason before the season started. No one really knew what the heck he was going to do from a defensive standpoint. Where were you going to play him? Just because, okay, he's labeled as an athlete, but where do you want to put him? Because he's just so versatile, and he's been able to do a lot, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my opinion on Nick Eamon-Worry is that he's a Cam Smith in training, right? Like they're both really similar. Cam was racking up tackles when he was a young gun like Nick, and I think Eamon-Worry's been, outstanding, right? Like as a freshman, like it's crazy what he's been able to do here in the SEC. I mean, stepping in against Georgia and like having double-digit tackles, like it's wild, and that goes to testament like how much of a dog he is and how much of a player he is. Like he's really, really, really good, and I think he's a very valuable asset to this defense, stopping the run too. I will add, I think, Tonka Hemingway's been doing a great job. I think Alex Huntley adds depth, number one, and you're right, Mike. Even at 80%, like Alex Huntley adds depth and he's another big force in there on stopping the run. So I think he's big this weekend as well when it comes to stopping the run. And I think in terms of like letting stuff like leak out into the second and third layers, I think that just comes down to, man to man, right? Like who's got what, fill your gaps and go from there, right? And gang tackling, like put all the helmets you got on the ball. I think it's a big thing, especially out in space. Texas A&M, once they get it out in space, we've seen they can be pretty dangerous with it. So I think that's a big thing, gang tackling, and then you gotta win the battle up front.
Well, it's going to be a good opportunity for South Carolina. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Great opportunity this week. If they're able to get to 5-2, be able to win 4 in a row after starting the year off 1-2, it goes to show that those games against Charlotte and SC State, which a lot of people wanted to look at and be like, well, you should win those games. Again, yes, but at the same time, too, they were needed confident boosters, and it came at the right time. And being able to have this bye week, and I said this last week, Joe, in the program, having this bye week happen after a big win against Kentucky, I think was huge. From an equilibrium standpoint, being able to just bring everything back down to where it needs to be, okay? You're on cloud 9, you beat Kentucky. Everyone's talking about the comments that Mark Stoops made and, Shane Beamer's dance around with sunglasses. That's great, okay? This team is not used to handling success. They're not used to it. They're not used to being in the spotlight, really, as members of South Carolina. Even Spencer Rattler. Yeah, he had a lot of success at Oklahoma. Teams that went to the playoffs, but this is different here. It's different. Unless you're an Eric Douglas, unless you're a Brad Johnson, unless you're one of these super seniors, you don't know what success looks like at South Carolina, or at least what having to handle it looks like. So they got a taste of it at the beginning of the season. Goes back to a quote that Mike Tyson once said, everyone has a game plan to get punched in the face. South Carolina got punched in the face. But they've had opportunities to be able to get back on their feet, and not just get back on their feet, but now they're swinging. And if they can go out there against A&M, again, multiple storylines that you could look at it, and you can look at from this weekend's game. But if they can go out there and beat a team that just embarrassed you a year ago, embarrassed you to the point where it looked like, and I think I said this last week, Joe, it was like, some 15-year-old playing their 6-year-old cousin in Madden, on PlayStation. And the stats were just absolutely ridiculous. That's what it was. That's what it was. If they can go out there and beat A&M a year after that took place, I think it might be one of the greatest turnarounds in 1 year against a team that I can remember.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. And I mean, there's another chance to do it against Tennessee down the road too. But I think again, like I said earlier, it all starts with Texas A&M. This team can go higher than the ceiling that they've been given if they can beat Texas A&M, and this really kind of starts it going downhill. What does this win say to Texas, or what does this win say to Tennessee? Like it's definitely more of a challenge. Granted, they just beat Alabama, so I'm pretty sure confidence is high over there in Knoxville. But I think Texas A&M is a big chance for this program and these players to kind of prove that there's something here. There's something brewing, and it's just a big win for the program if they can get it done, especially on State Fair weekend, primetime kick. It's big, Mike. It's big.
It is big, Joe. All right, we're going to wrap things up, guys. Appreciate you guys tuning into the program. Again, this is in place of tomorrow night's show. We will have GC Live post-game show on Saturday. I'll be down in South Carolina, so if you guys will be out there around the tailgate scene beforehand, if you see me, say hello. Maybe I'll give you a Bojangles gift card. But everyone have yourself a good night. Enjoy football tonight and enjoy the game on Saturday.